Welcome to episode 47 of The Checklist, brought to you by Secure Mac. I'm Ken Ray.
I'm Nicholas Raba.
And I'm Nicholas Tacek.
Identity theft. Sounds scary, right? Well, it is. While no one can take away who you actually are, with the right information, the wrong people can steal your identity. Basically pretend to be you and do a lot of damage in your name and to your name. Obviously, identity theft is the theme of today's checklist. Items on the list include an explanation of what identity theft is, common methods used to steal identities, notable cases of identity theft, ways to protect yourself, and finally, what you should do if you think someone has stolen your identity. We begin, as we're wont to do, at the beginning. Give us an example of what identity theft, an explanation of what identity theft is.
Basically, it's what it sounds like. Someone pretending to be someone else by stealing their identities. In some ways, it's a harder thing to do today than it was centuries ago, but it's still a big danger for the victims. Centuries ago, impersonating someone wasn't as difficult as it is today. With no pictures or instant communications, you didn't need a lot of information to convince others that you were who you said, even if that wasn't who you actually were. That kind of identity theft is rare today. Today, identity theft is rarely about taking over someone's life or living as another person. It's more about money. A good definition of identity theft might be like when a bad guy obtains private personal information or important financial details and then uses that info as a tool for financial gain. That might be taking out a loan, opening a credit card, or just racking up tons of purchases on a stolen card number. Modern identity theft can take many forms, but it all boils down to stealing someone's identity on paper so you can pretend to be someone else. You're a victim. The term identity theft was coined in the early 1960s as a way to describe a new crime that was occurring over the telephone networks. That form of identity theft used our old pal, social engineering. Someone would call you and tell you that you'd won some fabulous prize like money or a cruise. To claim your prize, all you had to do was give them some basic information like some banking details to make the deposit and some important personal info to verify your identity. You could see where this is going. And there never was any prize, and the caller would turn around to use that information you gave them for their personal gain. I just got thinking, I had one of these calls. It wasn't for a cruise, it was for a hotel timeshare. And right when they said the word, all I need is a $15 deposit to make sure that you don't cancel on them because, hotels sell out fast in Vegas. That's when the call ended. And it's like, thanks, but no. While they don't happen as much, these telephone scams do still happen today. They currently represent less than 10% of all identity theft cases. While people might not give away their information as freely anymore, they still do throw it away. By the 1980s, identity thieves turned to the old dirty tricks like digging through garbage because one's personal trash could be an identity thief's treasure. Let me tell you a thing about dumpster diving. I know about dumpster diving and what you could find in the trash can. Things like bank statements, tax documents, bills, credit card offers. These are all pieces of a puzzle identity thieves can put together to start opening lines of credit and going on spending sprees in your name. Just because you don't want the offer doesn't mean bad guys don't. Always think carefully and destroy something that could be used against you. Paper shredders? Totally your best bet here. Now it's the web, email, and digital technology in general that give these criminals access to the information they want. While it used to be easier to pretend to be someone else, the digital age has made it a lot easier to steal enough information. Not to take over someone's life, but to wreck their lives financially.
Now, in all that, one method came immediately to mind, the Nigerian prince. But there has to be a whole lot more. What are some of the most common methods used by identity thieves today?
Like Nick said, most methods have gone digital at this point, but phone scams and dumpster divers are still threats, especially the dumpster divers. Think before you throw paper with your information on it into the garbage. Ask yourself, is this enough info to impersonate me? If it's not, you should still shred or destroy any document that might have any info about you on it. Even if that bit of info isn't enough to do damage, that small piece of information plus another might be enough. With paper out of the way, most identity theft today involves digital information and the growing presence of technology into every area of our lives. It's easier than ever for someone to steal a credit card or a social security number. That doesn't mean there's an overwhelming threat, but it's important to know how these thieves operate. That way you can guard against them. First, digital doesn't necessarily mean online. There are offline methods to be aware of. Skimmers are one example. Bad guys attach these fake credit card readers to legitimate hardware, like an ATM or a gas pump. They can be clever and pretty difficult to detect. You accidentally pass your card through the skimmer as you insert it into the real machine. You get your cash or pay for your gas, not realizing that the skimmer has picked up your name, card number, and PIN. The skimmer's operator then uses this harvested data to commit credit card fraud in your name. Some schemes involve individuals with inside access to sensitive information. Sadly, there's really nothing you can do about that. There have been a ton of convictions related to people who've sold personal information, like credit reports, to third parties. One case from the early 2000s saw a man from Long Island sell off tens of thousands of customer reports to an unidentified third party, who then sold the information to other identity thieves. The FBI called it the largest case of identity theft they'd seen to that point, and thousands of people lost their life savings in the fallout. Black market activity is common with personal information. Just like hackers sell passwords and emails on the dark web, they sell consumer information useful for identity theft as well. That's why guarding against malware is important. If you're not protected against malware, you might end up with a keylogger on your Mac. Unaware, you go about your business. Maybe you do some online shopping, or log into your bank account to transfer funds. Maybe you apply for a job, typing in your social security number for verification purposes. Now, whoever operates that malware has all that information too, and it won't be long before it ends up in the hands of someone who will try and impersonate you. Phishing is a popular tool for stealing identities, especially if it's able to evade spam filters and convince a victim to simply give away some vital information. Anti-phishing filters and campaigns have helped reduce phishing's impact, but bad guys keep getting better at what they do. Large-scale data breaches are another problem, whether they come from hackers stealing information from a website or by compromising physical hardware. Obviously, the modern identity thief has many ways to try and make a grab for your data. It's why we need to be careful about where we submit important details.
Okay, that's a lot of identity theft theoreticals. Remind us of some real-world examples, if you would.
Well, a big one involved LifeLock. The company blitzed the airwaves with ads in the mid-2000s. They claimed to offer the strongest anti-identity theft protection around. Their founder was so confident in their service that he published his own social security number on the LifeLock's commercial. Of course, he had his identity stolen 13 times.
I'm sorry, 13 times, really? Because you think after 11 times, he'd be like, yeah, maybe we should change something. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No. I mean, while none of the bills were over a few $1,000s, it still exposed the fact that his company did little to actually protect consumers. Now, the Federal Trade Commission agreed. They fined LifeLock $12 million in 2010 for deceiving customers with their advertising. 5 years later, LifeLock was still running deceptive ads, so the FTC fined them again, this time for $100 million. LifeLock is a good reason to treat all third-party companies offering protective services with some skepticism. Just like with malware, there are plenty of scammers out there trying to sell you products you don't need. Another example, in the mid-2000s, a man named Albert Gonzalez led a group of hackers on a spree that led to the theft of tens of millions of credit card numbers and tons of financial information. They used a method called war driving. Basically, they'd drive around with a laptop and they'd look for vulnerable wireless networks to attack. Once they gain access to the system of major companies, they'd deploy malware to sniff out the data they wanted. It's a sure bet that at least some of the info ended up on the black market. Gonzalez committed lots of other acts of identity theft before being caught, and he's currently serving a 20-year sentence in federal prison.
Is this as much of a numbers game as other threats that we've discussed in the past? I mean, we've said before that phishing is a numbers game, but spear phishing targets specific individuals. And so I guess what I'm wondering about is, do we need to worry about identity theft, like if we're in a certain category, or is this the same sort of numbers game where really everybody needs to worry about it since everybody could be caught in the net?
That really depends on the type of identity theft we're talking about. With the large number of credit card breaches that occurred both on websites and at point-of-sale terminals for major big-box retailers in the past few years, it's almost a guarantee that you've had one or more credit cards suddenly reissued by your credit card company. Technically, that type of credit card theft could be considered a form of identity theft. Same goes if you've been a victim of a credit card skimmer at a gas pump or ATM. Those are much more prevalent in larger cities, especially in areas popular with tourists, by the way. Obviously, you'd need to worry more about identity theft if your personal details were out in the wild on the internet, which could be the case if a website where you entered sensitive information, such as your name, date of birth, social security number, if a website like that experienced a hack and a subsequent data breach. Since there are so many different avenues of attack for identity thieves, it's imperative to stay on top of security news, especially any that involves data breaches for sites you've used or places that you've shopped at.
Okay, staying on top of things obviously is one way to handle the next question I'm going to ask. How do we protect ourselves against identity theft then?
First of all, know that you are not alone. Banks and credit card companies take steps to protect your identity and to offer additional services. But there are also things that we can do ourselves. First off, keep a close eye on your credit score. Identity thieves rely on your inaction to be able to get away with their crimes over an extended period. People who monitor their credit and keep a close eye on their financial accounts can quickly spot unusual charges or activities. You can even sign up for credit monitoring services that will provide you with additional alerts should anything weird happen to your accounts. It's smart to keep an eye on your credit anyway, but preventing fraud and identity theft is an added bonus. One option with the credit agencies is requesting a freeze. Freezes are a big step. They prevent anyone from pulling your credit report. It's kind of a scorched earth technique that you shouldn't use if you're planning on opening a line of credit or applying for a loan in the near future. You'll need to pay up to $30 to get one started. The good news is you can call up the credit agency and ask for a removal of the freeze at any time. So if you feel like there's a short-term risk to your identity, you might want to request a freeze just to be on the safe side. That said, watching your FICO score and checking your report throughout the year can be just as effective. Other third-party services offering protection and insurance might not actually be worth it. According to Consumer Reports, proactive actions on your part can be just as effective as a third-party service. They point out in their reviews of such services that the terms offered by identity theft insurance aren't very user-friendly, and the amount they insure against is simply overblown. The chance that someone will rack up $1 million in identity theft damages against you is pretty small. Plus, the insurance companies also state they won't pay out if anyone else covers your losses. Federal law and creditors both provide protections against out-of-pocket costs, so you're probably never going to see a payout from any identity theft insurance. Even some credit monitoring services can be a waste of money, so look carefully at what these companies offer. Many will send you false positives or erroneous reports of suspicious activity for what is, in fact, a routine check on your credit. Often, you don't need to rely on others to protect your identity. Being proactive about checking your credit every 4 months is the more effective choice. Of course, you should also be careful to protect your identity online, sweep for malware, exercise caution when using unsecured web pages, and never transmit sensitive information over a public Wi-Fi network. In other words, the usual best practices.
Well, the other thing is, we talked about some of these big box stores getting hacked. A lot of times, they'll give you a free year worth of whatever major credit reporting service to monitor your activity just because you were hacked. I remember when Home Depot had their issue, I got one of the letters and offers from them as well.
I think that might actually be part of the federal law. I'm not positive on that, but I know the same thing happened when Target had a breach. I believe that's part of it, is that you have to, any victims of the data breach need to be have the ability to monitor their credit for, I believe, a year.
Okay, so we know what identity theft is, and we know some ways to guard against it. Worst case scenario, the worst has happened, and I've fallen victim, or, I think I've fallen victim to identity theft. What do I do now?
Well, it's important to get over the initial shock as fast as possible. Once you find out there's a problem, you should move quickly to prevent any further damages from occurring. First, figure out what's been compromised. Figure out if it was your bank account or credit card. Then put a freeze on the account as soon as possible. Call your bank to let them know that you suspect identity theft. They'll be able to tell you what steps to take next. With a little luck, that's the extent of your problem. Thanks to federal protections, you shouldn't be on the hook for more than $50 per account. But that can vary depending on the type of account and the type of problem. For example, reporting the possibility of unauthorized use before it happens can shield you from charges altogether. If you wait too long to report the problem, you can wind up responsible for the entire amount. That's why quick detection and a fast response is so important. Your financial institution will know the full extent of your liability. Of course, the problem might involve more than one account. Once you know one account was used without your permission, it's worth checking everything else you control for bogus charges or activity. A look at your credit report can help with this, but you can also let other financial and credit agencies know that you're a victim of identity theft. You can request the credit agencies put a fraud alert flag or full-on freeze on your account. A fraud alert is usually a step you should take when you suspect someone has stolen your identity. These alerts last for 90 days and are difficult to remove from your account before the expiration date, so it's a serious measure. They serve as a red flag to anyone who pulls your credit report, like a credit card company that receives an application from a thief using your credentials. This alert will tell the person reading the report that they should further verify the applicant's identity. At the very least, this should stop the thief from causing further damage. At best, maybe it could even lead to their arrest. Renew your alert every 90 days until the threat has passed. In the most serious cases, you might need to file a police report. That's only if someone compromises your identity to the point of thousands of dollars in charges, like in the case of medical identity fraud. If someone used your Social Security number without your knowledge, you should let both the Social Security Administration and the IRS know about the problem. You don't want to find out that a hefty tax refund owed to you went to someone else who stole your identity. Again, speed is the key to your response. When you're informing everyone that needs to know that there could be an imposter out there, the chances the thieves will succeed drops dramatically.
So I think what you said back there a minute ago was the first thing to do is not to panic. I mean, to get over the shock as soon as possible. And of course, the best way to do that is just to have a clear idea of what's going on and a clear idea of what you should do in certain situations. Now, we just threw a lot of information at people. It goes by really quickly. I do want to remind people that if you want to see those steps again, the website for this show has show notes for every episode. And you'd want to check those out at securemac.com/checklist. That's notes for this show, the 46 shows that came before this one, and all the ones that come after. securemac.com/checklist. If you have a question you'd like to ask or a topic you'd like to hear us hit, we would love to hear from you. Our email address is checklist@securemac.com. That address again is checklist@securemac.com. And if you can't remember that, do remember this. You are listening to The Checklist, brought to you by Secure Mac. And we'll talk to you next week.